Howdy doody buckaroonies, and welcome back to another episode of the No Pants Music Show. Today's video is a little bit different because it's sort of an apology in a way, I guess. In this video, I wanted to share with you some plugins that I initially wrote off for one reason or another, but found myself horribly addicted to, and plugins I use on nearly every session now. This isn't really a secret weapons plugin video because honestly I feel like those are just kind of dumb, but rather a video about some plugins that I feel like you would really benefit from checking out regardless of your style or genre or your level of experience as a producer, because they either make life easier or just make things sound better. I feel like we all run into these plugins now and again where we really don't give them enough credit, but they end up becoming a staple of our workflows. So if you've got some other plugins that you really love that aren't mentioned in this video, feel free to share those down in the comments below. Today's video is sponsored by Sound Theory, the makers of Gullfoss. Although Gullfoss is featured in this list in the interest of transparency, Sound Theory has no say over what I say or do in this video, and I figured I would take this sponsorship because I've been meaning to make this video for a while, but I didn't want to take too much of a risk with it because it is ultimately sort of a niche-y subject and I didn't want to accidentally anger the algorithm gods. Gullfoss is a really useful tool for mixing, mastering, and sound design, and I use it in nearly every session now ever since I've gotten a hold of it, and it's a tool that I think a lot of you would benefit from checking out as well. If you want to check it out and see if you think it's as good as I do, there is a free trial available, and you can find all that information linked down in the description below. So a big thank you to Sound Theory for sponsoring today's video and helping to support the channel. First on the list is Sonic Charge's Microtonic. This is a drum synthesizer plugin that seemed a little bit basic on the surface because it just has a simple oscillator, noise oscillator, a couple basic modulation parameters and envelopes, and a few effects, but it sounds incredibly good. Out of all the drum synth plugins I have and out of all the drum synth plugins I've used, this one is by far the best sounding and probably the most useful. The best part about Microtonic, and probably my favorite feature, is the patternarium. Sonic Charge runs this sort of contest on their servers where a computer algorithm generates new sounds and presets for Microtonic and drum patterns that are then voted on by the community, and the winners of each generation get passed back to create new versions of them. So this gets better and better as time goes on. So it's really just sort of an instant inspiration machine. So say I really like that one, you can actually just download this and import it directly into Microtonic. This is really how a lot of my drum design workflow goes these days. I'll go into Patternarium, find some sounds, download those presets, bring them into Microtonic, apply some tweaks and changes, or even go in and start using the randomization features to randomize the drum sounds or the grooves or anything like that and create a new drum kit. From here, I could then sample out each of these individual hits, add some more processing, and create a new sample pack of drums that I could use for client work, for sound design, or save for myself to use later. Next up is PSP's InfiniStrip. This is pretty much how I mix everything now. I come from a background of working in studios and stuff, so I was really used to working on this sort of channel strip workflow, but as I got more into the DAW, I got so used to EQs that have a million bands and other things like that, and super advanced multi-band compressors and all the cool, fun toys we have these days, but I find that mixing on a channel strip just makes you work faster, it makes you make smarter and more conscious decisions, and ultimately it just helped me get things done faster. Within InfiniStrip, there are actually quite a few different modules and quite a few different categories. So we have things like preamps, filters, gates, compressors, EQs, limiters, master control, and special modules. A lot of the modules in InfiniStrip are actually based on the DSP from a lot of PSP's other plugins, which are really highly regarded for their analog modeling and bringing all that nice, gooey non-linearity into the box, which just makes things feel a bit more vibey and alive, I find. There are two features of this plugin, though, that really stand out to me, and the first one is automatic parameter matching. So let's say we're EQing a sound and we do something like this. Now, if we wanted to change this out for a different EQ, we would need to copy these same settings over and then gain match them to make sure we can hear only the differences that the EQs are applying rather than the differences in the levels and stuff like that. But with InfiniStrip, if I flip to a different EQ, you'll see that all of these settings are actually matched perfectly. So every time you switch modules, no matter what settings you're doing, it's exactly the same, and you can hear only the difference in tone that module is providing without any difference in the settings or levels. Another really great feature is the automatic gain compensation, which is really powerful for gain staging and makes gain staging a mix way easier to do. So what you can do is actually just set this to auto mode, set a reference level, and then adjust between RMS or peak detection, then go to up, down, or just down mode, and it will automatically adjust the gain to match that reference level. So usually I'll go in and set my tracks to maybe something like -14, -15, use the automatic gain compensation, and it'll level everything out so everything is nice and gain staged and even, so I can go in through the rest of the channel strip and make sure I'm mixing with a healthy level. It's really hard to properly demonstrate this plugin in action because you really need to hear it applied across an entire mix, but it does offer a free trial so you can try it out for yourself and see what happens in a session. But let's go through maybe just a couple super quick examples to hear what this brings to the table. That brings us to Gullfoss. This is a really interesting plugin that I definitely didn't give enough credit to at first, because I found a lot of the times it can be very subtle, but it's one of those things that once I put it on my master especially, the mix goes from, okay, that sounds good, to, wow, that sounds a lot better. What Gullfoss does exactly is pretty hard to explain because obviously it's proprietary and they're not going to give out their secret formula, and it was, I believe, well over a decade in development before it was released, but also because it works based on the way we perceive sound. It's not like a lot of other dynamic EQ plugins that just reduce resonances. This is a lot more intelligent and bases it all on the way that we feel sound rather than just sort of an arbitrary make it flat approach. I'm gonna play a track underneath this muted just so I can hear myself talk here, but if we give this a play and start playing with the parameters, I think you'll see what it's doing. First up, we have the recover parameter. What recover does is essentially unmask the audio from itself, and it recovers the details and other things that you might miss otherwise. Tame, on the other hand, is designed to reduce resonances and things that are overtaking stuff that it needs to be recovered. So it's just doing the opposite sort of function here. So if we bring that in, you'll see it's kind of reshaping the tonal balance without being too similar to something like maybe Soothe. Gullfoss can run on individual tracks, on groups of tracks, or on the entire master bus, and there is also a live version which is much lower latency, and this plugin updates hundreds of times a second to really tame and clear up your audio and just sort of unscrew it from itself. Just to give this a quick demo here, I'm gonna play this on this sort of electronic cinematic synth score, and we're gonna start using recover and tame to bring the track back to life. And I think you'll hear what I mean when I say that this just makes things sound better. Let's maybe push that all the way to the extremes with 200% on each of these, and I think you'll maybe hear a bit more of what it's doing. It really does just sort of unmask your audio and make things sound a bit better. This is gonna get pretty extreme, but you'll find that it really actually doesn't sound bad. That is the real power of Gullfoss. Next up, we have Playbeat from Audio Modern. This is a drum groove generator tool, and it's insanely useful for generating drum and percussion loops, and you can even use it to generate melodic loops. It's not really designed for that, but it can do it, which can be sort of fun to explore. Like a lot of the other Audio Modern plugins, the real key feature here is the randomization, where we can have it just generate infinite new drum grooves over and over and over. So if we give this a play, it's gonna just keep going over and over and over. And if you find something that you like let's say we really like these first few rows, we can actually lock these in place and have it generate new top percussion lines while maintaining these 3 rows of information. Going through all the features would take quite a bit of time, but we can control things like the steps. We have density or ratcheting. We can change the pitch of each of these steps, so we could even turn maybe this kick drum on one of these hits if we unlock it to almost a snare type sound. If we solo that out and give it a play. And that's really powerful to use because it gives you a lot more flexibility out of the samples loaded into the engine. We have things like flam, volume, and panning for each of the steps, and we can even go in and get a lot more detailed with the samples and other features of the kit. So we could go in and maybe start randomizing the samples and trying out new ideas, randomize all the samples, and really start just generating unlimited new ideas. So I find this really useful during sound design sessions where I need to come up with a bunch of loop ideas very, very quickly. Playbeat has a really solid factory library of sounds. You can also import your own samples to use in it, and you can even send the MIDI from the plugin out. So you could use it to control external drum hardware or other plugins in your session, or as I mentioned, use it to generate melodic ideas and then feed that out to hardware or other plugins, which is quite a bit of fun. Last but certainly not least, we have Reference from SonarWorks. This is something I did not believe in at all until I had it in my hands in my studio, and this is probably one of the best things I've added to my studio setup in like the last year. Reference isn't really a plugin so much as it is a utility. What it does is correct the sound of your room in your mix position. So what you do is take a bunch of measurements with their little measurement microphone, which is also calibrated to give you the most accurate results. It does take a little bit of time, but it is well worth the wait. Once you get it all dialed in and corrected, you can see here it corrects the sound of the room. It can even correct the phase of different things. It's a really powerful tool to make sure your monitoring is as accurate as possible. Here with the green line, you can see the correction being applied to my room. And if I disable this, you'll actually see what my room is like before. So especially down here in the bass, things get really weird and sound kind of off. But once I bring this in, it neutralizes that and gives me a much better sense of the low end, as well as maybe a little bit of upper mid-range information here, which I didn't really know was a problem before I had this. One of the other really great features of this though is actually the translation check. So if I pop down here, what this does is allow you to change to different profiles to reference your mix on. So with something like the car examples, we have 3 different averages of different representations of audio in a car. And the nice thing about this is once I select one of these, you'll see that it's actually correcting to this translation check, but also applying the same room correction profile to everything. So even these other references with something like laptop speakers are a bit more accurate because it's referencing the translation check alongside the correction profile. The other cool thing about Reference is it does run actually as a system-wide application. So even if you're not working in the DAW, because normally what you would do is place this as the last plugin on your master chain, you can run it on your computer at all times. So you can even have this correction being applied when you're doing things like playing games, watching YouTube videos, or watching a movie. And that's a really cool thing because it does give give you just a better audio experience on your system no matter what you're doing. This is another plugin that's very hard to accurately demonstrate because you have to keep in mind that this correction profile is designed for my specific room where I'm specifically sitting with my specific monitors. So it might actually sound worse on the other end, but let's give this a quick before and after, and you should be able to at least appreciate what changes. It may not sound exactly better, but it does sound more accurate where I'm sitting, and that's a super important thing. And I guess that's my time here today. That is a short list of plugins I didn't really give enough credit to that I have fallen madly in love with, that have become an absolute staple in my workflow here in my studio. If you've got some plugins that you sort of wrote off but now are madly in love with as well that didn't get featured in this video, feel free to share those down in the comments below. A big thank you to Sound Theory for sponsoring today's video and helping to support the channel, and of course a big thank you to you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, I hope you learned something, and as always, I hope this inspires you to get out there and make something awesome.